to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. This is Dr. Greer, and I'm the founder of DisclosureProject.org and CSETI.org, the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and also the OrionProject.org. And I'm very grateful to the people at the World Puja Network for allowing us this time every 2 weeks to bring you an update about the work we're doing. And we'll be talking about some of the projects that are upcoming, as well as the work we're doing at Sirius.neverendinglight.com, which is the historic film that we're in the middle of production, and actually beginning to wrap up the production period right now on that film, and we'll be giving you an update on that. But the main focus of our show today is to bring you up to date with what's going on with the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, or CE-5 global initiative, where we are organizing folks around the world to make contact within the framework of universal peace and cosmic awareness with extraterrestrial civilizations that are visiting our planet and are here to help us and to understand human culture and human society and us individually. And so I'm very excited about having Kosta with me today, who's been really heading up and took the initiative himself to organize this group that now consists of dozens of groups around the world and hundreds of people who are going out and using the CE-5 protocols to make contact. And for those of you who are new to the show, I just want to talk a little bit about what that entails. Back about 22 years ago, I formed the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which has as one of its projects the Disclosure Project, but its main and central project has always been the CE-5 initiative, and that is when people go out to make contact with these extraterrestrial civilizations and these visitors within the framework of universal peace. And the foundation for that is universal awareness, universal consciousness. And so since we're on the World Puja Network, I'll go right into the heart of it. The heart of it is that the mind itself is an omnipresent field that is connecting all people and all places and all times. And through the techniques that we've developed and through the innate capabilities every sentient being has, a person can go into deep consciousness and see a distant place in space or time and use coherent thought to make contact with these extraterrestrial civilizations that are using very advanced electromagnetic systems, sort of their own type of radio frequencies that interface with conscious thought that is in a coherent field. And this is something I discovered back in 1973 during a contact experience that I had up in the mountains of North Carolina as a 18-year-old boy, young man, and which I subsequently developed into these contact protocols. The foundation of it is the understanding that the conscious mind, whereby all of us are awake, is always, whether we acknowledge it or not, omnipresent and unbounded. It's never limited to just the size and dimension of our physical body or space and time that we're in, and that the pure nature of a conscious mind is that it's always omnipresent. And so through meditation and becoming silent and centered in that mind, one can then awaken to remote places and see remote places in both space and time and contact these extraterrestrial civilizations by using a series of protocols that involve the thought being very coherently showing their location to you, but also you showing your location to them. So, for example, if there's an extraterrestrial vehicle out near Saturn, you would then show them where you are on Earth, you would show them the planet, you would show them, if you're in North America, and zoom right on into Virginia, where I am right now, so for example, using this kind of coherent thought imaging. And the reason this technique works and the reason people have such amazing experiences with it is because any civilization that can go faster than the speed of light, which a priori means all civilizations that are from another star system that are near the Earth, have developed technologies that are trans-dimensional and whose physics involve the science of consciousness and the science of mind. And this is not just a philosophical school, it is also a physical science that involves machinery, but very advanced machinery that are multiphasic resonance systems that cross faster than the speed of light into these other dimensions that involve visualized thought, the so-called astral sphere, coherent thought, and lucid dreaming. And so all of that is part of what we teach during these expeditions that I lead out under the stars. The next one is going to be out in Southern California in November. Unfortunately, that one's way oversubscribed and has a waiting list that we're having to move on to 2013. But what we do is that we basically train people to meditate in this fashion, go into the state of samadhi, and then begin to practice the skill of remote viewing or becoming a seer. And then once one has a sense of contact with these extraterrestrial beings or their spacecraft or their planet, to then flip that around and show them where you are. And we also use electromagnetic tones that we've recorded from ET craft and also from the crop circles that were recorded by the BBC that we project out into space from our location that gives a linear vector in case our minds aren't all that clear. And we also use high-powered lasers that go up 200 or 300 miles into space that go up to also give a linear sort of specific vector or point of reference in case, again, people aren't as clear in their imaging as they should be. So these protocols are all used in concert in a group dynamic out under the stars. And there are now two apps. There's an app that we've just developed for Android phones that you can use, and there's also an iPhone app that's been out for about a year so that you can utilize these protocols. It has the meditation techniques, it has the tones, it turns your phone into a magnetic field detector so it can pick up on electromagnetic field changes as craft approach, et cetera, and so on. So actually anyone with a smartphone now can easily download this app and learn how to do this if you don't have time to come out with us out under the stars on one of these expeditions that we do periodically throughout the year. So if you want to find out more about that, there's a lot of information at cseti.org. And I encourage people to practice this with people that they're in consonant sort of harmony with and who they feel connected with, to go out under the stars and make this sort of connection. I think it's really important that the philosophical and ethical underpinning of what we're doing is that we don't pick and choose amongst extraterrestrial civilizations, that we regard all intelligent life as centrally emanating from the great sun of reality, of the great being. And we are going forward as ambassadors in universal peace and in cosmic awareness in our outreach to them. And so the philosophy of this is that we are sending ourselves forward as ambassadors to the universe and approach this in a diplomatic and ambassadorial way, as opposed to the normal human way of sort of dividing different groups into camps of the good and the bad and the indifferent. Our view is very much that we need to be in touch with all extraterrestrial civilizations because we're going through a fundamental shift in not just the Earth but the entire cosmos, where we're going to go from a time of division and discord into a time of universal harmony, and the hallmark of that is universal peace. And so we have to have people who are doing this and understanding that it's key that we be ambassadors to all civilizations that are near the Earth or aware of the Earth or coming to the Earth. Of course, the Disclosure Project has proven that we are being visited, and the big question then becomes, then what are you going to do about it? Because we know that the President and the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and the UN Secretary General are not heading up an ambassador team to do this, and therefore, as citizens of Earth, we feel that it's important that we, the people, take on this task and create the morphogenic field, as Sheldrake would describe it, this sort of 100th monkey effect by a lot of us doing it together and creating this big shift in human awareness towards the cosmos and towards universal peace. So we're going to have to go from the current state of the world to world peace and universal peace all in one step. And that is what the big change that is coming and that we're in the midst of is partially about. And the root of it, however, is in this big shift in cosmic awareness, the understanding of what is the basis of oneness and unity. And it isn't, if humans view themselves as so diverse they can't get along, how much more so the kind of diversity in the cosmos. So it has to find a deeper spiritual basis for peace and a deeper spiritual basis for oneness. And that's really at the core of what we're practicing. And that's the core of the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative. And what's really important about the work that Kosta's been doing with folks is to coordinate teams from all over the world to go out often on the same evening or series of evenings and do this together. So what the effect of that is enormous in the sense that you have, instead of one small group here and there doing it, a whole lot of people doing it at the same time, which then potentiates this change and potentiates the coming of a new era of universal peace. So thank you, Kosta, for doing this, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on the show, Steve. I do want to thank you for the inspiration and the background that you've provided for 22 years, because the work that we are doing with our global CE-5 initiatives that you've mentioned grows directly out of the groundwork that you have laid for these 22 years by teaching people, educating them about the protocols, and making it possible for ordinary people to make contact themselves. This is really a very empowering type of thing. I like to tell many of the people that join our group that we don't need millions of dollars and expensive computers and antennas to make contact. We need our lawn chairs, our good spirit, our goodwill, our love, our intention to be peaceful ambassadors and to join with other humans. And the next thing you know is that the ETs are responding to that. They're overjoyed at that. So we took our cue from that groundwork that you put down, and since October of 2010, our groups have been going out every month, as you said, often on the same night or the same couple of nights to accommodate people's schedules, and coordinated our contacts. And this has been something that has resulted in approximately 70 teams that I have all over the world now, spread across almost 20 countries and half of the United States who do this on a monthly basis. And it's been very consistent in its application and also in its results. People will send me reports every month of the ET contact experience that they have had, and I compile these reports and then send them out to the entire group. And let me tell you, this really inspires the group members because they share it, and though many of them have never met, what this does is glues everyone together even better and makes a more coherent worldwide group, knowing that this camaraderie of spiritual contact with ET civilizations is what binds everybody. So we have a beautiful ongoing experience, and we're looking to obviously grow these many groups. You had mentioned the fact that governments are doing this, so really it is up to us, we the people, to undertake this initiative and to grow it as big as we can. And so in that spirit, I invite people who are new to this and willing to try and experiment and are open-minded to join us monthly. Come to etletstalk.org, where people can sign up and learn more. That's etletstalk.org, and we will be happy to welcome you to the Global CE-5 community and get you started on forming your own team or doing it by yourself and joining the rest of us in doing this coordinated, regular kind of contact.
Right, and on the disclosureproject.org site, there is an entire training kit that people can get if they can't come on one of these training expeditions. And if you're near an existing group, you can, of course, join those folks, or you can use the iPhone app or the Android app for smartphones, because it has a huge amount of material. People are shocked when they see how much information and how much meditation information and training material there is on that app. It's an entire encyclopedia, and and training kit that you can get online for any smartphone now. So those tools are there, and I think it's very exciting that you're coordinating this, because I'm obviously way overextended, frankly, and because we don't have a central office that's staffed with a lot of people, it's just whatever volunteers can do. And God bless him, Kosta stepped forward and said, look, I'll head this up, this will be fun, and he's been at it now for a couple of years, so thank you, Kosta, for doing that.
It's my pleasure. This work is its own inspiration. Once you get a lot of these reports coming in from people and hearing they thought they were alone and were the only ones who had wished to be able to do this, but then finding a community where they don't feel like they're strange or weird, once you hear them express that gratitude and then just join right in with everybody to do the contact, then you really realize what hunger is out there, and how the power of many is just greater than the power of just one. So that is really its own reward.
Well, this has, of course, been borne out by scientific studies by Dr. Bob John and Dr. Radin and others who have proven that with, like, for example, random number generators, when you have one person who's putting their intent on a random number generator, just thinking to it, it will have an effect. And it proves that mind and consciousness is non-local and has an effect even on mechanical, machines. However, when there are 2 people or 5 people who are unified doing it, the effect is exponentially greater. It's not just arithmetic. So I always point out to people that when there are hundreds of people or thousands of people doing this, it has this huge effect that's in the field of consciousness of humanity and the cosmos, and actually manifests a different future than the future that a lot of the war profiteers and others would like to drag us onto, which is, of course, the future of what Douglas MacArthur said in the 1950s when he stood in front of the Congress during his last speech and said World War III will be interplanetary. There's this sort of atavistic, very craven predilection for the power elite to keep the people of the world united through some kind of conflict. And we know from the testimony at the Disclosure Project from Werner von Braun and others, many others, that for years now, for about 60 years, it's been planned to launch a interplanetary war where they would hoax a threat from outer space. And that the only thing that's going to change that dynamic is for lots of people, first of all, to have the discernment to know the truth from the fiction, but number 2, to actually take matters into our own hands, because the governments of the world are usually simply pawns at the hands of the gangbangsters and the war profiteers and the multi-trillion-dollar, as Eisenhower warned, military-industrial complex to keep that other paradigm in the forefront. And we understand this. I mean, if you look at Hollywood over the last 2-3 years, there's been something like $2.3 or $4 billion spent on very xenophobic, negative, alien movies and video games and shows of all stripes, and that this is all part of a plan to basically brainwash the masses into this concept that we should be afraid of what's out there, so that eventually we will accept the costs of exporting war into space, sort of a very large ramp-up of the Star Wars-type nonsense that started during the Reagan years. And I think that what the public has to understand is that the only thing that's really going to change that is knowledge, disclosure, and people actually going out and making contact peacefully. And I always point out that, having been doing this both as a private individual since I was 18, which I'm no spring chicken, so that's now almost 40 years, 39 years I've been doing this. But on top of that, to have been doing it with organized people all over the world, on every continent, and we have had nothing but the most beautiful and positive experiences having contact with these civilizations, their people, their spacecraft, and all manner of way, where there's electromagnetic, physically, however way it is. The only time we've had any trouble at all is when we've had humans who, shot at us or chased us or robbed us at gunpoint in Mexico or whatever. But we've never had any problems from ETs. It's always been Homo sapiens, humans, that have been the problem. So one of the things I point out to people with all the armchair scaremongering, that the fact is that with all the thousands of people who have done this and are doing it, our experiences have been just very beautiful and wonderful experiences. And there's really nothing to be afraid of except the brainwashing that people are subject to. And I said, this is the whole thing where, you sort of, like the old In Vogue song, Free Your Mind. You got to free your mind of the sort of propaganda that's out there in the UFO and New Age community, and also that's out there in the mainstream media as well, and Hollywood, and sort of cut through all that nonsense and say, okay, if these civilizations are here, which clearly there's amazing evidence they are, what are they here for? There's some people say, oh, well, they're here because they have to have our genetic material. Well, no, because now we know that we can create genetic material in a test tube. So if we can, interstellar civilizations 1 million years more advanced than we are can. Well, they're here to get our gold or silver or natural resources. Well, it turns out there are whole planets and asteroids out there made of pure diamonds or gold or what have you. So you don't need to do that. So no, they're here for whatever excuse people come up with, that sort of this paranoid reason why they're here doesn't hold water. The truth is they're here because they know we've reached the point where we have weapons of mass destruction and are now going into space and could be an existential threat to other planets out there. And they want us to do two things: see that we don't destroy ourselves or others, but also to reach out to those of us on this planet who are ready to create a bridge between the human civilization that we have here to these visitors who are here, and then move our civilization on a path that is peace on earth and peace in the heavens, peace that is universal. And that's really why they're here. They're interested in seeing if that can happen and reaching out. And that's why, when Kosta, when you said that, virtually, and I have gotten a report recently from someone who just learned of this, and they went out to a remote area of Utah with a friend, just the two of them, and they were practicing the protocols from the app that they had on their iPhone. And suddenly, within minutes, this craft appeared right over them. And it was this brilliant craft, and it was this beautiful celestial light. And he was so amazed, and so was his friend, that this would happen that easily. I said, no, it's not amazing, because it is on one hand. On the other hand, it makes sense because you got 7 billion people on this planet, and you have all these wars that are still going on, and all this money and expenditure going into basically a corrupt macroeconomic order that's destroying the biosphere and other animals in the oceans, and all the military spending and all the thermonuclear weapons, and more countries trying to get atomic bombs, and on and on. And how many people are out there who, A, know this is true, that we're being visited, and B, are doing anything constructive, positive, forward-looking, progressive, peaceful? And so when someone emerges out of this morass of the human condition of right now in 2012, who's willing with a pure heart to do this, they're often astonished at how quickly the ETs respond, and in all the mysterious ways that they do. And the reason for it is that they really are eager to have people who will approach them, but not, like, do a trick for me because you're a dolphin at SeaWorld, but out of a sincere desire to connect and a sincere desire to come together as one people. And the basis for that oneness is the experience of the universality of pure consciousness, which an ET from another galaxy possesses as well as we do. That even if their intellect and emotion and bodies may be different, the conscious mind within all of us is a singularity. It is one conscious being, and this is what all Vedic masters taught and know, and what all people who, of course, listen to the World Puja Network know. And so when you begin to contemplate that, then you begin to understand why it is that the contact happens so easily once you not only understand that, but begin to practice these meditation techniques and protocols that are rooted in the Vedic science of consciousness.
I want to underscore what you were saying, Steve, that amid this morass of warlike behavior, the sense of appreciation for peaceful human beings is really great among the ETs towards us, because I have hundreds of reports over just the last 2 years from my teams that attest to the peaceful, benevolent, positive type of contact that they've been getting. And again, as you said, whenever there is a negative experience, and guess what? It's because a military jet or two has flown over and disrupted what was a beautiful contact experience in the sky or on the ground, or a helicopter's flown overhead that was clearly meant to be disruptive. So yes, it is the humans who really are the troublemakers. And,
right.
And
it's like, look in the mirror if you want to know what you should be concerned about, but it isn't out there in space, because there is a universal order, and if a civilization hasn't attained a certain level of peacefulness, they're simply not allowed out of their solar system, and usually not very far from their home planet, and that is a prime directive that is enforced. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, some of the folks I know at the CIA and the Pentagon have told me they've been very irritated when we've used some of these anti-gravity things we've been building for 60 years at Lockheed and Northrop Grumman, my uncle's old company, and some other places, and we try to go too far out in our own solar system, and basically we're told, that's it, no further, stop. and we have been stopped. And the reason for it is that they really don't want. In fact, Neil Armstrong, who passed away a couple months ago, who landed on the moon, and my uncle designed the lunar module. What's fascinating about that event is that when we landed, the crater on the rim above where we landed, it was crowded, I'm quoting, with extraterrestrial vehicles and these disc-shaped craft and other craft that were just hovering there watching. And, of course, this was filmed, and it was all kept secret, and I know that these astronauts were ordered to maintain secrecy, but I know very close family members of Buzz Aldrin and also Neil Armstrong who have told me absolutely that happened, but they're not allowed to talk about it. But one of the things, the messages that was sent was, because the Apollo program, the moon program, was part of the Cold War competition with the Soviet Union, a fact that is often forgotten by many Americans, it was not viewed as a terribly great thing, because we weren't doing it as a people, humans. We were doing it as a competing nation state, as part of our military competitiveness with the old Soviet Union at the time. And that's just a fact if you look at the history of the 50s and 60s and the space program. So the ETs even then were more looking for us to reach a point that we really should have reached, probably in the late 1800s or early 1900s, when mass communications became possible, to begin to say, look, we're all people. We need to live together peacefully and in cooperation, rather than in a paradigm of endless domination and submission and war and madness. And that's the leap we haven't made in the last 100 years that we need to make. And that's the sort of entry ticket to being an interplanetary civilization. And many times people say, oh, why don't they just come and, I remember Larry King asking me, why don't they just land on the White House lawn or whatever? I'm going, well, aside from being blown out of the sky by electromagnetic weapons and other missiles, you're presupposing they would want to land on our White House and not the White House in Bogota, Colombia, or some other country, and number one. And number two, they're waiting for humans to reach a certain level of evolution before that happens, because they're wanting us to interface with them in a paradigm of not just world peace, but universal peace. World peace isn't big enough. That concept is an old concept. Now we have to think of world peace evolving simultaneously with universal peace, because otherwise we're going to unite the world, as Reagan said at the UN, against an alien threat. well, we don't want to unite the world against an alien threat. So in other words, we're going to trade fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan with the whole world being united but trying to fight other planetary systems. Well, this is not going forward, my friends. This is going way back. And very dangerous thinking and very retrograde thinking. But unfortunately, the UFO subculture in Hollywood and TV is just, filled with these kind of images and concepts, and it just should be, relegated to the dust heap of history. But certainly we're the minority voice on this. But it's the voice of, I think, reason and the voice of wisdom. And we need to have more people join with us to engage in this CE-5 initiative globally, because it is through the effect of mind in its non-local field that you begin to have an effect that you can't even see. The whole concept, there's a sort of 100th monkey effect where, once a certain number of people begin to do something, other people are affected by it, even if they have no direct linear contact with the people who are doing it. And this has been proven scientifically. So the more that we do this, and do these meditations for universal peace and the healing of the world and all of this, and make contact, we're creating the energy patterns and deep consciousness that is having an effect beyond what we can even see and know about. And that's the beauty of the nature of the mind within us, is that it really is all the time an omnipresent field of awareness, and it has this effect. And this is why meditation is so powerful, and also praying for others at distances can have a huge effect and a healing effect and what have you. And it's because we've been able to prove scientifically that consciousness itself and mind itself is an omnipresent field, and it is integrated into every point in space and time, and it's there not in a part but in its fullness. And that's what blows people's minds when they begin to contemplate the fact that every single individual, whether it's human or ET, is actually a quantum hologram that is a conscious universal form and is plugged into that universality and has an effect that is universal, not just local. And I think this is where you begin to realize the power of a lot of people coming together to do something wonderful. And that's what we're working on, and that's why it's so important, the work that Kosta is kind of heading up with this.
When I set backs every month as I communicate with people and learn who's going to be joining that month for the contact event, it's amazing that really all I have is about 200 or 300 people right now that are participating in this. Now, that's not a lot of people out of the 7 billion on the planet. Probably a decimal point with a bunch of zeros and then a 1, right? But the power of the coherence, you talk about how it becomes more exponential. I know that those 200 or 300 people, because of our coordinated, cohesive, aligned approach, coherent thought sequencing, we're having an effect that's way out of proportion to our numbers. And that's why the ETs are overjoyed, and they tell us that through various means to discover that there's even a handful of us that are doing
right.
it. Now,
and then for every person doing that, there are thousands of people who have gotten these apps who are doing it, like this man who just told me about his experience with just one friend. Wasn't coordinated with what you were doing, but they're still doing it. So there are these thousands of people doing it all the time at various times around the world. And since time really doesn't exist, it's still happening. You see what I'm saying? It's on a level of the deep conscious structure and the Akashic record. That work is still going on. It's still happening, even if it's not specifically on that night and at that moment and snapshot in time, as the flow of change is what time is. So that's a really interesting thing to understand, too, is that there are thousands of people on top of the ones that do these on these coordinated bases. And that's why I encourage people to do it in any way they can and whenever they can.
Exactly.
Because it's an additive effect that isn't arithmetic. It's exponential, the effect it has. And that's what's really exciting. Kosta, do you have any reports you want to share from any of these groups, just to give people a sense of the kinds of experiences and things that people have had happen? I think people always like hearing what experiences folks have had.
Everybody does enjoy hearing what someone else has experienced, because the contact is so diverse that whatever contact you may have had is not like someone else's. And so it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was possible. People loved it. Recently, one of our groups in New York had 27 people joining for one of the CE-5 evenings, and they had an amazing encounter, literally on their property, which was, I believe, is somewhat rural, and they were out there together as a group meditating, doing the protocols. From behind a nearby tree, they saw an object rising, like a light, a golden light. And after determining that it was, not a terrestrial aircraft or a satellite or whatever, it was far closer than that, it rose above the tree, and to everyone's amazement, very slowly, at what they estimate is about 1,000, maybe 1,200 feet of elevation, this golden craft light floated over the property, over the center of the circle where everyone had gathered, and it was close enough that members could look up and actually see a triangular shape amid this glowing light. It apparently moved people to tears. They were just awed by this, and it went over the group and then went on and disappeared. Some people managed, in their surprise, to get some pictures. I don't know about the quality of the pictures because I haven't seen them all. Sometimes people are prepared with good quality cameras. Sometimes in the moment, all one can do is pull out your iPhone and take a picture, right? But this was a very up-close, personal, and I would say spiritual experience for those involved, and maybe even life-changing, to be able to have that kind of a close encounter where you can see the outlines of a craft. And that's the kind of thing where nobody can debunk that. It is an experience that those people have had very personally, and it's something they take with them the rest of their lives, and they tell other people, and it has the ring of authenticity and truth, and allows other people then to open up and consider the possibility that they can have the same kind of experience. So that's how our network is growing, through experiences like that, the ripple effect of one person telling another with the ring of truth draws another person in. So I wanted to give a shout-out to that group and say thank you all for doing this. Oh, and by the way, as is pretty classic with many of our experiences, once this happened for the group, 2 military jets flew over, and subsequent activity that they had seen seemed to stop. So, again, this is a classic kind of thing where a disruptive effect by humans is introduced because they don't like the fact that the rest of us are having a great time with our star cousins.
Right.
So,
right.
But that comes with the territory. Many of us have gotten used to that, and it still allows for these powerful experiences to happen.
Yeah, it almost sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, and I know that when Arm Kalika was with us in June, a few months ago, we were in Colorado in the San Luis Valley, and we had this brilliant craft that materialized coming in from the west behind us, and very low, and it floated over us, this brilliant lit kind of disc-shaped object, which we did film. And instantly there were a series of jets that had taken up position in the northern part of the valley out near up towards where Colorado Springs is, and NORAD, North American Air Defense Command, has been located. And one of those jets peeled away with afterburner and arced and came right over towards this object, and this object literally dematerialized in a crystal clear sky. And as it did so, it sort of made a ring. It sort of made a swoosh that we actually have on a still camera that Emery Smith took, where this object just literally vanishes in thin air and, ramps over into another dimension and goes into another dimension from linear space-time. And all this is on video. And, of course, we were seeing this happen. And, of course, I knew this would happen because it invariably does. But the filmmaker and his crew and the people who were there going, oh, my God, I can't believe that happened. As I said, well, this happened several times a night. Every night we're out. And it was the first night that he was out. And I said, this is just kind of de rigueur, and I'll never forget being at Rio Rico down in Arizona, and we were doing this thing with a whole group of 200 or 300 folks. And one day at lunch, I'm sitting out on the the terrace on the balcony of this restaurant at this resort there in southern Arizona, way south of Tucson, and we're not that far from Fort Huachuca, which is Army Intelligence Headquarters, where they have a lot of underground facilities where there have been ET craft that have been shot, and the bodies of the ETs have been autopsied and stored. And I know of people who have worked in that facility, and we're having this big gathering. It's broad daylight in the middle of the day, and I'm having lunch with Colin Andrews and Dr. Loader and several other people, Dr. Bravo and other people who are at our table, and this unmarked helicopter comes in at 50 feet, hovering off of this thing. The door opens, and there's this electromagnetic boom and beam that comes out with the devices and imaging stuff. And this is a helicopter absolutely in violation of all FAA requirements in terms of altitude and distance from a private resort and gathering like this in broad daylight, a few feet from us. And Colin Andrews, who's, of course, the fame for his work in crop circles and coin door, he says, "Oh, my God," he says, "I can't believe it." I just said, "Well, welcome to my world." And he says, "Well, I don't know if I want to live in that world." I said, "Well, you are this weekend." Anyway, so it was hilarious, and we did get really great photographs of this unmarked military chopper doing this. And I tell people this happens as sort of what you would expect at this point, where, the biggest secret in the history of the human race, they're trying to keep a lid on it, and here we are out there with thousands of people now trained, making contact, and you know what? They're losing control, and so they can get a little desperate and do silly things like that, but it doesn't stop us at all, and it doesn't stop the ETs at all. We just always ask the ETs to manifest in whatever way it is safe and appropriate for them. Don't take any undue risks. But, we see them as sort of the leading partner in this dance, since they have better reconnaissance capabilities than certainly I have. And but invariably, they'll appear like this New York event that you talked about that just happened, and then there'll be some military craft come in, and basically the activity that comes in at that point is trying to suppress any further linear space-time materialization. But here's the zinger. We have found that even if that happens on a trans-dimensional level, in another dimension parallel to linear space-time, within the near etheric, near astral field, the ETs will be there in the field with us, and we'll actually see them shimmering, and our electronic devices will be going off, and our radar detectors and laser detectors and magnetic field meters, and we'll get photographs of these images of beings moving around us, and sometimes even entire craft, but with the naked eye you don't see them, and yet they're there, and they're shifted into another dimension that you can just get a sense of, and they're then beyond the range of these military assets, which I think aggravates them even more. But nevertheless, it means that the contact continues even after there has been a disruptive event like that. And so one of the things I train people is to be sort of as aloof as a cloud as these things are happening, to not be concerned, don't be afraid, just stay in that state of deep, calm, pure consciousness. A little of this eliminates all fear, so said Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield. And so you just stay in that state and know that these civilizations that can go from one star system to another out of linear space-time can be right there in the field or under the earth or in the sky around you, and be out of linear space-time and out of harm's way, but still be there. And you can see them in your inner sight. You can feel them with your electromagnetic skin, your senses. You can sometimes smell them. You can sometimes hear tones. And your electronics often will be signaling that they're around. Even though you're out in the middle of a wilderness, you'll have these electronics beginning to beep and chirp and talk as if it's a person, and you're going, what are they doing? Well, they're going inside the electronics of these devices that we recommend that people have out there with them. So all kinds of things like this happen, and it's a never-ending and exciting journey. And what the ETs have said to us over the last couple of decades is that we're always going to be with you, and we can be with you no matter what these silly things, the games, the war games that these guys may want to play. And at some point, that nonsense will stop. and there will be just complete and open contact, and that's what we're working towards. But of course, obviously, the world has some explaining to do until then and some evolving to do until then. But we're well on our way, and I think this film that we're working on is going to make a big quantum leap forward in that.
We're very excited about the film Sirius, and I know from talking to many of our team members that people are anxiously and excitedly looking forward to being able to help it go viral, distribute it on the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Just in the way that our crowd came together to be able to fund it and get it to the point where it could be in pre-production and now production and then post-production. And we will finally see the wonderful, groundbreaking results that it brings. So
well, and this is what we're working on right now. We're doing the final production elements, and as you may have heard from the last interview, we were able to obtain DNA samples from this possible deceased extraterrestrial being, and I do have news about that, just to update people in the next few minutes. We have and right now I'm just not going to give names out, but we have a team of medical doctors and PhD geneticists who are at the top institutions in the world doing this work with us. Of course, Dr. Bravo and I and Emery Smith went over to a very distant foreign country and obtained CAT scans and X-rays and physical DNA samples from this small about 6-inch long body that is mostly skeleton and some connective tissue, but we were able to get some DNA material. What is astonishing is that the CAT scan of it is an oh my God event when you see it. It puts to lie any question that it's an actual organic, non-hoaxed physical body, number one, because you see the internal organs, et cetera, and so on. Number two, it is not some hominid, because it's not old enough to be a fossil like Lucy or some ancient, from the period before Homo sapiens. It's just not that old. I mean, it's dried out, but it's not a fossil, and it's certainly not that old. The third point is that it has features which are like a human in terms of a head and 2 arms and 2 legs and a thoracic cavity and an abdominal cavity. But that's kind of where the similarities end. And there's so many other anomalies. Now, a medical doctor who literally wrote the textbook at an Ivy League school on skeletal genetic and fetal dysplasias, as they're called, and abnormalities, has looked at this now and has said this is nothing he has ever seen, and also that he and the radiologist, who was the chief of radiology at the institute where we had all these imaging studies done, have stated that the amount of bone density precludes it being a 20 to 22 week aborted fetus, which is what the size it would be if it were human, which it doesn't look human anyway, and that it was something that apparently was perhaps a year or more old because of the degree of the bone density, although there are further studies being done on that. So we've gotten an enormous amount of data in the last 3 weeks that we didn't have prior, and we're going to get more with the genetic studies, which will probably take a couple months, and how much of that will be able to appear in this film depends on how quickly they can be done. We're not going to rush it because we want to do it right. But, of course, we do have a deadline on the film of sometime in December. So we're just going to have to see how all that comes together. But it is being worked on very, very vigorously. And I can tell you it is the best team in the world in terms of credentials. So this is the sort of one thing that we're working on. Of course, there's a lot of other information that will be in the film, because the film really wants to encompass contact and transdimensional sciences, new energy, and the disclosure material. And, of course, that's a lot to do in 2 hours. I mean, so it'll really just be a taste of all of that. But we're also working to see if we can develop a website where this film becomes a portal and then the film will refer to, let's say we have only a few of these military witnesses in there, but on the website there could be, several dozen of them with their entire testimony on the website that you could use the film then as a portal. Same thing with government documents. Same things with the information on this possible small ET body, because you could do an entire movie about this journey that we've been on. Same thing with the contact events that CSETI has had, where we've had hundreds and in fact thousands of encounters and photographs and visits and pictures of ET beings and craft and what have you. So any one of these things could be an entire series, and never mind 1 2-hour film. So we want to develop a sort of a multimedia approach to this, and that's another thing we're going to be working on the next few months. And we're going to need all the help we can with that. We're actually in the process of searching for a very top-drawer web architect firm that's big enough and professional enough to achieve that in the next 2 to 3 months, which is a very tall order. But at any rate, that's the kind of thing we're working on, and the team at Never Ending Light, Arm Kalik and his team, are working to try to get all these images and interviews processed and organized into a coherent movie. And we hope that we can have the premiere sometime early next year. So that's still the kind of timeline we're looking at, all things being equal. The actually making of the film is outside my control, of course. I'm not a filmmaker, but the kinds of materials that we provided are such that it's going to be amazing.
That's right, and I just want everyone to know that our community will certainly be behind this because, as you mentioned, Dr. Greer, the film encompasses so many different interwoven themes that any one of which could be a deep dive into its own series.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the film will open a lot of minds. It will astonish a lot of people, and they're going to want to follow up and maybe have contacts of their own. This will be an incredible educational effort to empower average individuals to see that they can join in and become part of this people-powered movement of disclosure and ET contact. So the potential there is just great.
Yeah, well, I think that it'll potentiate that, and it'll potentiate more people to come forward who are whistleblowers, who have secrets, who've been in the government, and it will also potentiate the means, we hope, of generating the funding from people by streaming the video or doing video on demand or whatever, so that we end up having enough resources to develop a new energy lab and put some of the brilliant scientists that have come forward in one place in a lab working to bring out these technologies so we can get off of oil and gas and coal. Because the big secret of the secret is that they don't care too much about the fact that the people think that there's intelligent life out there. The studies have shown 2/3 of the public believe there's intelligent life out in the universe. The problem is to say they're here, and then how did they get here, and then what's the physics behind how they got here. And when you open up that question, then it's goodbye ExxonMobil and Halliburton, and goodbye Goldman Sachs, and goodbye centralized macroeconomic order, and the petrodollar is for Schimmel, and it's gone. And one thing after another, the whole house of cards is basically replaced by an entirely new macroeconomic order of self-sufficiency, sustainability. Each village and town and community would be self-sufficient. And the sort of, the 200 or 300 folks who now have more than half the net worth of the world, that would power, literally and figuratively, would be shared. Right now it isn't. We just pretend we live in a democracy, but we don't. And so I think that that's the reason for the secrecy, that most people just simply have never understood around the whole UFO issue. And it has to do with the macroeconomic and order of the world, which is understandable. It's the oldest story in the world of cartels wanting to get more and more power. But in reality, what it's doing at this stage is it's strangling the life out of the Earth and killing the biosphere, and leading to one conflict after another in the Mideast and elsewhere, and to enormous poverty. Most Americans don't understand that there's a statistic that I always share, that 48% of the world's population doesn't do not have a pot to pee in, literally do not have a toilet or running water. So 48% of the world does not have indoor plumbing. So this is kind of hard for most Americans to wrap their mind around, because we tend to be so kind of self-satisfied and narcissistic in our society. But if we're going to be compassionate about our fellow humans, we have to realize that it's a dire situation globally, not just environmentally, but in terms of poverty and geopolitics. And this isn't going to be solved by punching another hole in the ground to get oil and gas out of it. So that's why, this information that will be in this film, Sirius, and people who are just hearing about this, you can see what we're doing at Sirius.neverendinglight.com. Is so important, because it's going to connect all these dots together so people understand that we're not alone. We can make contact, but also hear the sciences of the future, the technologies of new energy, of anti-gravity, of energy from zero-point field and the quantum vacuum, and the ability for the world to make a real change from the course it's on to a course that can go on for thousands of years of abundance and peace and sustainability. And that's really what our objective is. And so the film is going to make that really clear to people. And it certainly, in 2 hours, can only introduce all these concepts, but I think with some really skill in the art of filmmaking, which we have on this team, then we can do that. And hopefully there can then be sequels. There can be follow-up ones that go deeper and deeper and deeper into various parts of this. So we're starting with this one, and thanks to all of you who've provided the funding for this. This has not been funded by a corporation or a big movie house. It's been funded by all of you, and I just want to thank all of you for your tremendous support that have given us the opportunity to work together to bring this out.
It's been a wonderful journey, and I think people are still there, and they're going to take it to the next level once the film comes out.
Indeed. Well, tell people again, Kosta, how they can get hold of you and be part of these coordinated CE-5 journeys. Give them the website and your information again.
Sure. You can surf to etletstalk.org. That's etletstalk.org. We'd love to sign you up, and I'll send you some information and welcome you to the community. And as Dr. Greer was saying, the apps that he has produced are wonderful tools that can get you out in the field for next to nothing and get you started. So I encourage people to look those up and just go out and do it. You'll be surprised at the results, and we'd love to welcome you into the community.
Right, and for those of you who want to, you can sign up for free for our newsletters and our mailing list and information on everything we're doing at either cseti.org or at disclosureproject.org. And you'll get an update every week or two about what we're doing and where we're having these gatherings out under the stars, and the update on the film and other information. So you can sign up and get that information for free for anyone who just wants to click it on and put your email address in there, and we'll stay in touch with all of you. So we're about out of time. I'd like to thank you, Kosta, for your input and your support and all the hard work you're doing.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Steve.
And I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network, because they've been so wonderful, giving us this opportunity to update people and to share our perspective and information on this really fascinating and world-changing subject. And until next time, keep looking up and stay in touch. Hope to see all of you soon. Bye-bye.